Welcome, everyone. Imagine sitting on your porch on a warm summer evening and you hear that familiar, high-pitched whining sound near your ear. That sound belongs to a mosquito, a prominent member of the insect order Diptera. While a mosquito bite might just seem like an itchy annoyance to you, in many parts of the world, it is a matter of life and death. Think of these insects as nature's dirty flying syringes, capable of picking up microscopic pathogens from one person and injecting them directly into the bloodstream of another. Today, we are going to explore how these tiny creatures operate as disease vectors, and more importantly, how we can use mathematics to predict and stop them. Now that we have introduced our topic, let us look at what actually makes an insect a dipteran. The word diptera comes from Greek, where di means two and ptera means wings. If you look closely at most insects, like bees or butterflies, they have four wings. However, dipterans are unique because they have only one pair of functional membranous wings used for flying. So what happened to the other pair? Their hind wings have evolved into tiny club-like structures called halteres. These halteres are incredibly fascinating because they act like biological gyroscopes. They vibrate during flight and help the insect maintain balance during complex, rapid maneuvers. This incredible agility is exactly why it is so hard to swat a fly or a mosquito. Understanding their flight is just the beginning. This brings us to their role in disease transmission. In the context of public health, these insects act as vectors. A vector is simply a living organism that can transmit infectious pathogens between humans or from animals to humans. There are two main ways they do this. First, they can be biological vectors. In this case, the pathogen actually grows, develops, and multiplies inside the insect's body before it is passed on. Mosquitoes are a classic example of this. Second, they can be mechanical vectors. Here, the insect does not host the pathogen internally. Instead, it simply carries the germ on its dirty feet or mouth parts from a contaminated surface directly to your food or body. Knowing how they transmit diseases helps us understand why studying them is so absolutely critical. The importance of studying dipteran vectors cannot be overstated. They are responsible for some of the most devastating disease outbreaks in human history. To put this into perspective, mosquitoes alone kill hundreds of thousands of people every single year. This staggering death toll is primarily driven by the transmission of malaria, especially in sub-Saharan Africa. If we did not understand the specific biology and behavior of these flies, we would have no way to predict outbreaks or protect vulnerable populations. By studying where they breed, how they bite, and how pathogens survive inside them, scientists can design targeted, life-saving interventions. This urgent need for intervention leads us to identify the specific culprits. Let us break down the most infamous group of dipterans, the mosquitoes. You must remember that mosquitoes are divided into three main genera, each responsible for different terrifying diseases. First, we have the genus Anopheles, which is the sole transmitter of malaria. Next is the genus Aedes, easily recognizable by their striped legs, which transmits dengue fever and chikungunya. Finally, we have the genus Culex, which is responsible for transmitting filariasis, a disease that can cause severe swelling, as well as viral encephalitis. Recognizing which mosquito is present in an area is the very first step in predicting which disease might break out. While mosquitoes are the most famous, we must also look at other dangerous dipterans. Sandflies are much smaller than mosquitoes and often fly completely silently. Despite their size, they are responsible for transmitting leishmaniasis, a very severe disease caused by a protozoan parasite. Then we have the common housefly. The housefly does not bite, but it acts as a highly efficient mechanical vector. Houseflies land on feces or rotting garbage, pick up dangerous bacteria like cholera or typhoid on their hairy legs, and then land directly on your food. Additionally, some specific flies can cause a gruesome condition called myiasis, where they lay their eggs on living tissue, and the resulting maggots feed on the host. Now that we know who the vectors are, let us explore how we measure their threat. To truly understand how diseases spread, biologists cannot just rely on observing insects in the wild. They must use mathematics to predict the severity of an outbreak. This brings us to a crucial concept called vectorial capacity. Vectorial capacity measures exactly how efficiently a specific mosquito population can transmit a disease in a given area. Think of it as a transmission speedometer for a disease like malaria. If this number is high, the disease will spread rapidly through the human population, inevitably leading to an epidemic. By breaking down the insect's life cycle into mathematical variables, we can figure out exactly how to stop it. This mathematical approach gives us a powerful equation to work with. Here is the formula for vectorial capacity, denoted by C. Conceptually, this formula combines the mosquito's population, its biting habits, and its lifespan to predict disease spread. Let us look at every symbol. C is the vectorial capacity, meaning the average number of new human infections generated by one infected human per day. The variable M stands for vector density, which is the number of female mosquitoes per human. The variable A represents the biting rate. Notice that A is squared. This is because the mosquito must bite twice, once to get infected and once to pass it on. So if the biting rate increases even slightly, transmission explodes. The variable P is the daily survival rate, and N is the extrinsic incubation period, which is how many days the pathogen needs to develop inside the mosquito. Finally, the denominator, negative natural log of P, represents the expected lifespan of the mosquito. Before we calculate anything, let us visualize exactly why that biting rate is squared. Look at this diagram showing the transmission cycle. On the left, we have an infected host. The mosquito takes its first blood meal, represented by the first arrow labeled A. At this moment, the mosquito ingests the pathogen. However, it cannot transmit the disease immediately. The pathogen must undergo the extrinsic incubation period, taking N days to develop inside the vector. If the mosquito survives this period, it must then take a second blood meal, represented by the second arrow labeled A, to inject the pathogen into a new susceptible host on the right. Because the transmission relies on these two separate biting events, the biting rate A multiplies by itself in our formula, becoming A squared. This visual perfectly explains the mathematics. Now that we understand the formula and the cycle, let us see this with a concrete example. Imagine a village where health workers found 10 mosquitoes per person, so M equals 10. Each mosquito bites once every 2 days, making the daily biting rate, A, equal to 0.5. The daily survival probability, P, is 0.9. And the parasite takes 12 days to develop, so N equals 12. We substitute these exact values into our formula. First, we square the biting rate, getting 0.25. Then we raise the survival rate to the power of 12, getting 0.282. Multiplying the numerator gives us 0.705. The denominator, representing lifespan, evaluates to 0.105. Dividing these gives our final answer. C equals 6.71. Physically, this means one infected person will cause nearly 7 new human infections every single day. This is a severe outbreak waiting to happen. That terrifyingly high number tells us we must act immediately to bring the capacity down. This is where public health interventions come into play. Suppose the government distributes insecticide-treated bed nets to every household in that village. These nets act as a physical barrier, making it much harder for mosquitoes to feed on humans at night. Because the mosquitoes cannot reach the humans easily, the biting rate drops drastically. Now, remember our formula. The biting rate is squared. This means that reducing the biting rate does not just have a linear effect, it has an exponential impact on the final transmission rate. The survival probability and incubation period remain unchanged because the nets primarily stop bites. Let us see mathematically how powerful this simple intervention really is. Let us calculate the new transmission rate with these bed nets in place. Because of the nets, the biting rate drops from once every 2 days to once every 10 days, meaning our new biting rate A is 0.1. All other variables, density, survival rate, and incubation period, remain exactly the same. We substitute 0.1 into our formula. By squaring this new biting rate, we get 0.01. Compare this to the 0.25 from our first example. The successful biting factor has been reduced by a factor of 25. We multiply our new numerator terms together and divide by the same denominator of 0.105. Our final answer is 0.268. This means one infected person now causes only about a quarter of a new infection per day. Because this number is so low, the outbreak will likely die out completely. We have covered a lot of ground today, so let us review our key takeaways. First, we learned that dipterans, with their unique single pair of wings and halters, are among the most dangerous animals on the planet due to their role as disease vectors. Second, we saw that they can transmit pathogens biologically, like the malaria-carrying Anopheles mosquito, or mechanically, like the common housefly. Third, and most importantly, we discovered that by applying mathematical models like vectorial capacity, we can pinpoint the exact weaknesses in their transmission cycle. We proved mathematically that targeting the biting rate with tools like bed nets is incredibly powerful. You now understand not just what these vectors are, but how to defeat them. Excellent work today.